Welcome back to XpressionFM Sport. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Show. And today, now, as we go into our second segment of the show, and we're going to go all the way across the continental. We're going to go continental, go to Europe, and I rang in with netball queen Gracie Moore, and we had a chat about a little thing called the Fast5 and the World Series that happened over this weekend over in Christchurch in New Zealand. Really like this chat, and because I know you're listening in, Gracie, thank you for giving up your time, because you know what, I just enjoyed having a laugh with you, so you know what, I hope you can laugh along as well. Here's the chat we had.
And here we are on the netball section with Gracie Moore. Thanks for joining me. Buenos dias. Gracie, over there in hopefully sunny Spain. It's been terrible weather over here in Exeter, so hopefully
sorry to hear that.
I'm better there.
Yeah, much better. I mean, it's like 19 degrees today, lovely waterfall sunshine. It's gorgeous.
Ooh, it's practically balmy, isn't it? My word.
It is.
You may as well go to the beach and sunbathe in that weather, mightn't you, at this rate? I mean, it's been
the beach, hundreds of miles away. I'm landlocked, mate, so I wish, but unfortunately not today.
Oh, landlocked troubles and being in the middle of the city. When I say it's been raining cats and dogs over here, it's been raining cats and dogs over here, and it has been absolutely shocking weather. So I'm very jealous that you've had lovely weather, and somewhere that's had some nice weather to another place having nice weather right now as they're right in the middle of their summer. Of course, over in Christchurch in New Zealand, where they had the Fast5 World Series.
Yes,
which is well, it's wrapped up by now. I'm talking the Net Blacks, the New Zealand men's team won the men's Fast5 crown, and Australia won their second straight women's crown. And to be honest, yes, you can talk about the sort of action, who won games, but you know what, Gracie, I don't really care about that. I don't really care about who won the games, because that isn't the point of why I love the Fast5 series, World Series, and the Fast5 series as I do for England netball and for the Super League. I just love it because it's so, I just think, fun, and I think it's exactly what netball needs. Do you agree with that, at least, that maybe it's sort of what netball needs right now?
Absolutely. I mean, netball's had a massive stigma in the past for not being as fun as certain other sports. For example, I remember my childhood was tainted a lot by boys and men saying, netball's boring, but why would we need netball? We have basketball, when netball and basketball aren't the most comparable of sports, contrary to what people believe. And this makes it more exciting. This doesn't give them an excuse to say that netball is boring. It's the fastest version of netball you will find, and it's the most fun, I think. There's so many variations of it, there's so many different rules, and it's inclusive for everyone, really. I think it's a fantastic version of netball that is gaining popularity and is here to stay.
Yeah, so for those who don't know what Fast5 is, I'll give a brief Spark Notes version of what it actually means. So you've got 5 people on the court at once, and you know, that's a change from the 7 you would have normally on the court at one time. And then they have different point scoring roles. So, for example, instead of just scoring 1 point, you can score 2 and 3 points. And it almost acts like in basketball with with the free throw line, with the 2 points and 3 points. There's a power play section where all your points are doubled. So you can, if you want to, have a 6-point shot, which is great fun. And then it's just the really cool things that I think make it quite memorable. So, for example, you've got the sort of, I suppose, rehearsed dance routines that you get at the start of every game, which is always good fun, because some of them take it really seriously, some of them kind of are laughing about and taking the mickey a bit, and they're both good fun regardless. And of course, the other thing as well is that, as I mentioned earlier on with the Net Blacks, this is also a much more inclusive form of netball, because you have got that men's tournament as well. So it's a very, I think, interesting idea. I think it's taking a playbook from cricket, I think, and in that sense of kind of having a different style, and rugby with rugby sevens, for example, I think that's taken a playbook. And you have to say that like for netball, which I think, okay, again, you're welcome to disagree, Gracie, that I think is a sport that is a bit old-fashioned sometimes. It's not very netball, is it?
No, I think it's very different to netball. You look at it and you wouldn't necessarily, as someone who isn't a fan of netball, for example, you may look at it and not recognize that that is actually a version of netball. It looks like a completely different sport when you watch it because of how, well, I mean, netball's a fast sport already, but Fast 5 is much faster. And the idea of the 2-3 point shots and then the added extra of doubling when you enter your power play quarter, it makes it so much more basketball-esque, I think, with those shots. And I personally love a 6-point shot. I think they're the best to watch. You know, when you're down by 5 points, you've got 30 seconds left of the game. You need that 6-point shot, and then someone in years gone by for England, for example, the likes of Rachel Dunn was who you would need to be there
exactly.
to sink it.
Yeah.
And they, honestly, those shots are the most satisfying thing to watch. And as the crowd on their feet, there's never a moment where it's dull because obviously the game is much shorter and there's only 5 players on the court, so everyone's got to be running more than they usually would do in a normal game of netball. It's just so much more energetic, and there's never a moment where you're thinking, oh, this is a bit boring. I don't really know, like, who's going to win. I'm not really interested in this. You are always hooked to it because of the different rules. Yeah.
And I that's the thing that really that's what struck me when I was looking at the highlights of the games that have gone and also kind of previous versions of the Fast 5 is that those 3-point shots, I mean, my word, how accurate have you got to be to get one of those 3-point shots with no backboard on a smaller hoop on the net that's a lot smaller than a basketball net is, with no backboard? It takes so much skill. I mean, it's so much skill, and that blows me away. I'm not saying that there's less skill in scoring one goal, because I promise you, Gracie, and I promise you, the listeners here on XpressionFM, I am nowhere near good enough at netball to claim to be like that. I'm nowhere near good enough. Nets media going to put me at kind of wing defense or wing attack because I can just run myself ragged like Popeye. But that's when you look at it, whoa, that's the skill, isn't it? It's almost like it's almost like they're the Harlem Globetrotters of netball, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, my favorite thing ever is I can obviously relate very hard to how difficult that is, because in any kind of netball environment that I'm in, whether it's intramural netball or whether it's netball at home in my local league or when I used to play regional netball, in a warm-up, we would obviously warm up, running, stretching, drills. But then the next thing we would do if we ever got bored was we'd stand at the edge of the circle and see who could get the most shots in from the edge of the circle. Now, you'd probably wait about 6 or 7 shots going around before someone got one in, and it'd be the biggest cheer, because it's so difficult to get that ball on the correct trajectory to go into that hoop the way it needs to in order to be a goal, because you're so far away. And add the pressure of a timed match, crowds watching you, and a 6'2" defender with arms longer than my whole body. Add that pressure on there, and it should never be negated how difficult that is to get a shot in. Intramural is my favorite place to do it. Sometimes I'll just pick up the ball, throw it, and it goes in, and everyone's like, whoa, how did you do that? I can't answer the question. It's not skill. Most of that kind of memory. Yeah, muscle memory.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
I tell you what, for nothing, you can tell as soon as that ball has left your fingertips whether it's going in or not. Even though you've got another few seconds of it in there, you can tell. And it must be so stressful for the players of Fast 5 to have that ball released from their hand. Feel that it's not going in, and then you've got to make the decision of how on earth are you going to get a rebound back from this, because you're not under the post. If you miss it, you're not just going to be able to pick it back up again. That ball could be anywhere. It could be over the other side of the court. It could be in the crowd. It could be bouncing off somewhere else into a defender's hands. And you haven't got time in a Fast 5 game for that to happen. You have to be on it, and you have to be making the most of all your shots. But then also you've got to find the fine balance between making the most of your shots and taking the risks of going for the big shots, because you need those points, because the Fast 5 game's too short to just sit around on the 1-point shots.
Yeah, well, it's funny you talked about the muscle memory, because again, for the reference to our listeners, I am nowhere near as good as Gracie, and Gracie would absolutely destroy me in any netball competition and netball contest. And I'm not just saying that to sort of be a nice friend, Gracie. I'm saying that because that's the truth. But it's funny because I do have a bit of that sort of muscle memory, hand-eye coordination thing after doing cricket for so long, and I can sometimes tell. Right, if I've got the right lie, if I've got the right sort of angle, because
you can.
I've done that with cricket for years, and I can bowl a ball and I can release it somewhere near, and I know roughly where that ball is going to land. I know where that ball is going to land, and I know roughly how quick it's going to go, and that's just muscle memory, and that's just something I know. It's just second nature. So I totally understand that, and I just think it's really cool as well for younger viewers of netball, this, because they can see arguably netball superheroes coming out here with some amazing skills. And I think that's the important thing about these events, is that sort of we're not asking for the most prestigious events like the Netball World Cup, like the Commonwealth Games, to start playing Fast 5. We're not, because that's just not going to happen. And you need those to use the cricket analogy, you need Test cricket as well to have T20, and you need 15s rugby as well as sevens. You can have both still. We're not saying that Rugby World Cup should then be sevens all through. We're not saying Netball World Cup needs to be Fast 5. But if you're a younger viewer, then why wouldn't you try and get them involved in netball by doing a Fast 5 event?
Yeah, I know, and it's so rewarding. It's so much more rewarding because again, a Fast 5 is more than just the shots, but the shots are a very big part of it. It is a very big part of it. The idea of more points for your shots.
It's entertainment. It's the entertainment of it, I think. That's it. I think it's the entertainment I get from it.
It's like a Showtime kind of thing, which I love. And there's so you'll know that there's so many players that play for these top teams that you'd expect, they'll be at the tournaments because they play for their country, they're really good, they're a stalwart of the netball. We'll call it netball sevens.
Yeah.
It's not called that, it's just called netball. But netball sevens is like rugby sevens, it makes sense.
Netball fives.
Netball
fives.
Yeah, but I'm talking about netball sevens, like the players from there.
Yes.
From there, you'd expect them to be part of any team that country is in a tournament for. But you have the likes of, I remember that one year, the likes of Caitlin Bassett. She's a very, very good shooter for Australia. I believe she doesn't play much anymore. I think she's probably borderline retirement, but she wasn't part of Fast 5. And it was crazy to me because, and this was many years ago, because I always looked up at her as like one of the best shooters in the world, because I realized that she was only very good from under the post, but because she's 6'6", you can't just be under the post and she will receive the ball and she will bring it in. There is no way that she will miss those shots under the post. However, that's one example I can think of. There's many others, probably part of the England team, but England are more, I think England are much better in their shooting lineup of being very flexible in terms of how far out they can shoot. Whereas Australia, they have many players who are just under post shooters. That's it. And I remember she wasn't part of the Fast 5 team, and it was crazy to me. And I realized it's because the biggest part of Fast 5 is the fact that you have to be able to get these shots in from far away. Otherwise, you're not really a very useful member of the team. As a shooter, you have to be able to get them from far away. And the likes of Eleanor Cardwell for England, she's amazing from everywhere. I don't think I've seen a shooter more accurate than her. There was never a problem with her, for example. She's part of the Fast 5 squad because she is good from everywhere. But coaches from these countries have had to make really difficult decisions on axing players from the Fast 5 team because they're not good enough. And that's crazy to say as someone who's an international player. They're not good enough to be part of this because it takes a different skill level, a completely different skill level to be good at Fast 5 than it does for the netball sevens, I think. I know, even. I don't think. I know that's the fact.
Good. Yeah, well, say it with confidence, Gracie. Say it with confidence, Gracie. Please do it because I think you're spot on at least. And again, I suppose we'll link it onto what we talked about last week when we were talking about the battle to play netball in Spain. Do you think if they made Fast 5 events in Spain, people would come along and go to them, do you think?
I think potentially, because the thing that I thought of the other day, I was speaking to a friend from work the other day, and I was saying about how I miss netball so much, and he didn't really know what netball was because he's from Ireland, and as much as they have like youth teams, they don't play netball in Ireland, and he was saying, why don't you try, because I explained what it was to him, and he said, why don't you try joining a handball, for example? And handball's obviously very big in Spain. I feel like Fast5 is the same level of speed and agility required, for example, as sports like handball. So I feel like, if anything, Spain are going to be more inclined towards the Fast5 version of it. They're inclined towards quite fast sports, I'd say, compared to netball as it is, because as you say, it's quite an old-fashioned sport. But one thing I did mention last week that I feel like is quite a big point is that, and as much as this is going to, I don't know if it's going to sound bad, but biology isn't on the side of the Spaniards, I would say, because to be good at netball, it is an irrefutable fact that you have to be tall. You have to be tall.
Which is something that I'm not gifted with.
Yeah.
Although it was quite funny because I'd been put a goalkeeper a few weeks ago. Just you know how not tall I am, Gracie. I would admit on the air that I'm about, I don't know, kind of 5'6" or something like that. I'm not exactly a tall guy. But it was quite funny because there I was kind of jumping my socks off every single time I tried to block it. And one of my good friends, somebody who has weirdly been kind of shipped as a power couple, weirdly enough, with this person. Flo New said to me, quote, "You're just naturally quite springy, aren't you?" So I suppose I got that on my side, but sorry to interrupt you there, Gracie. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I like that anecdote. It's good. I mean, admitting you're a short king on air is hard, but there's nothing wrong with short kings. Listeners, there's nothing wrong with short kings. Anyway,
there's nothing wrong with it. You're right.
Nothing wrong with it. Also, what I was saying is, especially in centre court, it's fine. You've got people of all heights. I mean, you've got the likes of players in Jamaica, Zimbabwe, the African nations, where the centre court players, where the players are like upwards of 5'3", 5'4", and that's fine because they're so quick. But at the either end of the court, you've got to have a bit of height. I mean, you hear the commentary for netball matches, and as soon as a shooter or a defender, a circle defender, is under like 6 foot, immediately they're labelled as short. Immediately they're labelled as short.
That's ridiculous, though, isn't it?
You think so? Relative to netball, no, it's not. I mean, I know so many tall, but people much taller than me. There's times when I've been part of teams that I feel short. I mean, I went to Australia a few years ago and New Zealand for a rugby and netball tour with my school. Very trip of a lifetime. And
sounds like it.
Yeah, and we did well in our matches. We out of the 5 that the girls had for netball, we won 4. But the one that we lost, we were absolutely hammered by a school in Melbourne. They were massive. They were huge. I was standing next to all of them, the shortest player. The shortest. I was playing goalkeeper, obviously in my position. I was up against a shooter who was 6'5", and she was 16. And I could not get my head around the fact that, and that was normal. And I couldn't get my head around the fact that that's because they're so tall in Australia. Whereas you come to Spain, the average height of a man here is probably 5'8", 5'9". Like that, and that's men. You can imagine how short women are.
Yes.
I have not seen a single woman in this country anywhere near my height. And I think that would be a big issue for the Spanish people. They'd have to really work to find ways around that to be anywhere near good. And I think that is why netball 7s or Fast 5 just isn't going to work here. And it isn't going to work in many European countries because a lot of Europe is quite short on average. And I'm not saying, oh, they shouldn't have netball here. They should have it because they're short. No. Socially, fine. Everyone should have the right to access these sports. But competitively, they're never going to get anywhere, unfortunately. And that's same with Fast 5. They're just not going to get anywhere.
You're probably right. I'm trying to give you some hope, Gracie, so you've got at least something to hold on to and think, yeah, maybe there's some chance of getting at least some netball over in Spain because, Well, I'm not the person over there in Spain, and I'm not the person playing the netball properly and to a good level. I'm just mucking about and failing to play goalkeeper in the.
But you know what though? You know what though? Grassroots netball, I will always stand by that more than I'll stand by that.
Oh yeah,
it's so much more inclusive and fun, and sport over anything else should be fun. And sometimes I find with netball, you get to the point where the attitude gets a little bit. I'm not sure if I can use that word, so I won't. A little bit catty, I'll say instead.
Yes.
It's just not as fun as you get to the high levels. Grassroots netball, I've never been at a grassroots netball match, especially within Intramural. I've not had the time of my life. You reach the end of the week, and on a Sunday, you realise how much work you've got to do that week. You've got an essay due on Friday. You haven't even started it yet. You haven't even planned it yet. You've got all these things to do. It's cold. Your heating isn't on your house because you can't afford it. But you know what? It's fine because Sunday night netball is back. And that is literally the light at the end of the tunnel for me. And I'm not being dramatic with that. Sometimes it really has been the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm absolutely gagging to get back and forth here. I can't wait. I cannot wait. And I can't wait to play with you more than anything else.
Well, you know what? Why not? I'll finish this off by, firstly, I'm going to say, I'm just going to say, we will get the netball commentary next year. Next year, we are doing a netball commentary with you. And secondly, it's going to be sort of, do you think this is the start of them trying to get men's netball to actually be a thing?
I hope so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not speaking for all men ever. You can never speak for all men. But generally, for the men that I know, they don't have a very positive opinion about netball because it's not aggressive enough. A lot of men have said that to me. They've said, "Well, where's what? I can't beat him up. I can't knock him to the ground." I'm like, that's not what sport is about. Just because you can knock people to the ground in rugby does not mean you can knock people to the ground in every sport. And I think that men, as much as netball is gaining traction through men, I think that it's going to be a little while before they all start to realise how fun of a sport it is. But televising even men's netball is a really good thing that has been happening recently with New Zealand, with England, Australia, and I like how they put so much emphasis. And I always see on Instagram as well that the women's teams of these countries are always training with the men, which I think is lovely. I think it's really good to have that kind of inclusivity, and I can't wait to see more men's netball, hopefully televised on bigger channels like BBC. I think that would be amazing, but that would be a little while. I mean, we fought for our lives to get women's netball on the BBC, so God knows how long it's going to take to get men to be televised for netball. But I'll keep my fingers crossed because it's very fun to watch men play netball. Not in a creepy way. I meant that in it's fun because it's very different to how women play netball.
Yeah, exactly. I was chuckling to myself then because you mentioned about sort of contact, and then sort of one name jumped into my head, kind of my close friend and sort of XTV president Tom Swanson, who's already picked up his first. He's already injured one person in intramural netball so far, and he injured somebody playing bench ball. This guy is a menace, playing anything that uses a netball. And
what makes me laugh though with Tom Swanson, it's never malicious. That man is so lovely.
I know.
That's the thing.
It's always accidental.
Yeah, I don't know how he accidentally murders people on the court. I don't know how it is by accident.
Yes,
because
I know.
He'll help them up. He'll make sure they're okay. If they've got a bleeding knee, he'll go and help them out. So it's clearly not malicious. He's just number one, I would argue, but clumsy. Number two, I would argue, very eager. But you know what? Being keen doesn't kill anybody. It doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't.
So keep going, Tom Swanson. We love you, and you're a fantastic member of Nets Media.
I will. He is, and I will. I will let you know later on this evening, Gracie, if he's managed to catch another body playing intramural netball like he did a few weeks ago when some poor girl landed square on an elbow after getting shoulder charged in midair. Yes, we will continue the Tom Swanson injury files later on this evening. glad I was able to make you laugh for a bit on this Sunday morning, Gracie.
I need it.
I need you. I need you to have a laugh. You know what? I need you to have a laugh this Sunday morning. So thank you, Gracie. You're more than welcome back on the show next week. You're part of the furniture these days. And I'll let you know what we
I feel like I'm very much there. So thank you for making me feel so welcome in Xpression. I feel really grateful to be here.
Well, thank you. Well, you're the person giving up your mornings as much as I'll be here regardless. So it's not nice for you to give up your time. But I'll let you know what we'll talk about next week. I haven't thought about it yet, listeners. So we're gonna have to. I'm gonna tease you there a bit, and I'll think about something cool to talk about. Maybe even we get a nice crossover with EUNC, but maybe we'll see about that.
That'd be lovely.
Maybe some strings are being pulled behind the scenes. Who knows? But regardless, it would be really cool, you know what? But anyways, thank you for joining me, Gracie. Now on the Sunday Sports Show, we're going to go to a quick song break, and then we are going to take a moment to reflect on this Remembrance Sunday of remembering those who paid the ultimate price.
And also, today we're doing a slightly different twist on our first netball section. We're actually going to do this live on the air. So let's see how this comes out. I'm joined in the studio this morning by the netball queen herself, Gracie Moore. You're now unmuted on your call. And, just firstly, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien. I'm always really excited to talk to you on a Sunday morning. This is a highlight. You know that already.
Well, I'm more than pleased and happy to hear that, Gracie. And it's a pleasure to be talking to you as well. And thanks for giving up your time on this Sunday morning. I know you had a night out last night, so you know what? Good on you for getting up this early in the morning to get here on the Sunday Sports Show. Because we all know what's more important. It's Sunday Sports Show, isn't it, Gracie?
Oh, absolutely. You know I wouldn't miss this for the world. We had a little bit of a slow start to the morning, didn't we? But, I'm raring to go now. I've got netball on the brain, so I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to go.
Happens to the best of us, doesn't it, Gracie? Happens to the best of us, and we've all had a big night out and woken up slightly late, so don't you worry about it at all, Gracie. Let's cut straight into the story and let's stop talking rubbish about nights out. It's been announced that England will host a 4-day tournament in January, hosting Australia, New Zealand and Uganda at both the Wembley Arena in London and the First Direct Arena in Leeds. This Netball Nations Cup will be on top of a 3-test series against South Africa in December. Fran Connolly, Chief Executive Officer at England Netball, said, quote, following an historic summer where the Roses were once again catapulted into the nation's heart, we're excited to host a Vitality Netball Nations Cup where our fans will have the privilege of watching some of the world's very best netballers and of course have the opportunity to get behind the Vitality Roses. Also commented was the head coach of the Roses, Jess Thirlby, who said, quote, January's always an important part of our international window, and for it to culminate with playing teams of this calibre is a significant step towards preparing for and realising our longer-term ambition. I think it's a really good idea, this. I think this is exactly what international test netball, arguably needed, you can say. And, firstly, how important are these international series and these test series for netball and for international netball to grow as it is?
Well, I've been to many of these test series in my life. I mean, the equivalent of this, the quad series. I've been many a time to the Copper Box in London. They tend to do a similar kind of setup. So the Copper Box matches in Motor Point Arena in Nottingham. But that tends to be England, Australia, New Zealand and Jamaica, not Uganda. And I've thoroughly enjoyed them. I think they are a fantastic way to keep your netball love ticking over whilst you're waiting for the big international tournaments like the World Cup and the Commonwealth Games. I think that it's never not been fun for me to go to these ones. I think that winter netball is the best kind of netball. And the fan turnout when I've been has been incredible. It's amazing usually it's the top 4 teams, so they don't necessarily need the exposure to netball, but the addition of Uganda into this will be fantastic, and I think that is largely due to their success at the World Cup this summer, just gone. Obviously, we know they did really, really well. They are now the top seeded team in Africa. So it's going to be interesting to see their matches against the likes of England, for example, because they are quite, at the moment, they are quite equally matched up, I'd say. There is good chance for Uganda to do well in this quad series, in this test series, sorry. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting watch. And I also like how the venues are in Leeds and Wembley, because the Copper Box in London and East London tends to be the go-to venue for London events. But I've been to one in Wembley Arena many years ago, donkey's years ago now, probably 10 years ago, watching England play. Wembley Arena is just a different vibe entirely. Really big events happen. Music events happen in Wembley Arena, Wembley Stadium. Big football events happen in Wembley Stadium. Wembley is a fantastic place for sport, I think, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that affects the turnout for the series.
It really is, it's a great announcement for netball, and actually I think I'm spot on with that. I was trying to get tickets for this if I actually was able to. I think they're on sale quite soon, but it's a really good idea. This, I think it makes sense to have those more regular series. It's what football and rugby has that netball doesn't have. Is those regular test matches that aren't at the World Cup or the Commonwealth Games, as it were. And you know what? Because we here at Xpression Sport, we love our predictions and we love our match recaps as it were. Let's do a preview to how all of these teams go into this Netball Nations series. So let's start with the hosts, England, who, well, I think let's be frank about it, for as much as they've had a really interesting and really, I think, important international series and season, hasn't exactly been maybe the most successful, let's be frank about that. Of course, with the exception of the second in the World Cup, third place in the last quad series in 2023, and then that disappointing 2-1 loss in the away series against the New Zealanders. Now, it's weird because everyone's talking about England netball kind of having such a really great season, but have they actually underperformed slightly, do you think?
Well, I think that you could argue that, yes, indeed. I mean, the 2-1 loss to New Zealand broke my heart a little bit because we did
Game
better
two,
than them.
I mean, Game 2, what a shock. That was a 57-36 loss.
I know. It was not good. But I think that part of the reason that this may be happening to England is the fact that the coaching team are using many of the future roses in order to, go to these games. So instead of the likes of, I don't know, Gio Mentor, who's now retired, Jade Clark, Joe Harton, Helen Housby, the stalwarts of the England team with years and years of experience, probably upwards of 500 caps between them for England. Jess Thirlby and Sonia McCloma and the rest of the coaching team have decided to give more exposure to the younger roses, the future roses, if you will, so the ones that are coming up through the ranks. And as much as they're fantastic girls, I think that this is their period of growth. They're not quite there yet in terms of matching the levels of New Zealand, Australia, etc. But I think obviously this will hopefully pay off for the coaching team in 3 to 4 years, when these girls who are really young, probably on average around 22, 23 years old, when they reach the peak of their career and they've obtained many caps for England, they'll be way ahead of the equivalents of these other countries, because Australia, New Zealand, etc. are still using their most experienced players for these test series, whereas England are testing out different, testing the waters with different combinations, which in a way is what you need to do. And as much as that won't win you as many matches, it is good experience and it will pay off in a few years, maybe by the next World Cup, maybe by the next Commonwealth Games, who knows. However, I do think this means that with this test series, depending on who Jess Thirlby is going to have picked to play this test series, I imagine we'll get an announcement very soon. I don't suppose they're going to do well against the likes of Australia and New Zealand, for example. I think the matchup against Uganda with this future Roses team would be fantastic, but I don't think they would do well against the likes of Australia and New Zealand.
Perhaps so, and it's going to be interesting as well to see whether or not there's that real advantage towards the Roses. Now it's a home series for England compared to the away series they had against the what's the nickname for the New Zealand squad again? I completely forget. It isn't
Silver Ferns.
Silver Ferns. I was gonna. It was either the White Ferns or Silver Ferns. I was gonna go with, and the
silver.
Yeah, the Silver Ferns. Yeah, so no, thanks for saving me there, Gracie. But yeah, it's interesting to see how they get on in terms of whether or not there is that difference with a home series and an away series from the English point of view. Let's go to their opponents. Let's go to the Silver Ferns, and I can say that with confidence now. They drew the Constellations Cup against Australia, which was a fairly kind of regular series in that the home team won. The home team won every game that they played in their respective nation, and so the Silver Ferns lost their first 2 games, played away, won their second 2 games by 3 points each in the second set of games. So it was a 2-2 drawn Constellations Cup. They had that, of course, that 2-1 home win against England in a series. They finished 3rd in the World Cup and actually have some history against some of these teams in this league. They picked up a 10-point 54-44 win against Uganda in the prelims, but however did lose by 6 to the English in the semi-final. So there is a bit of history there. And then you go back even further than that in the quad series, they finished 2nd, losing out by 6 points to the Aussies. So there is a bit of history between all these teams with New Zealand, particularly with Uganda, which is something that not most teams have played Uganda recently. England and Australia haven't played Uganda over the past few years. So they might have that on top of the she-cranes. However, for New Zealand, are they actually an underrated squad, do you think, compared to the Aussies? And kind of many people are looking at the Aussies and the English as being the top 2 teams in world netball. But actually, the Silver Ferns are actually maybe sometimes as good as the English.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue they're underrated. I feel like everyone and their mother in the netball world knows that New Zealand are a good team with the capability of absolutely annihilating England. We saw it in the Test series against them a while ago. Also, I feel like with New Zealand, their talent and their ability to win games against Australia and New Zealand comes in ebbs and flows every few years. It kind of goes up and down. Like, I mean, no, the listeners can't see me, but you know what I'm doing, like an up and down graph.
Yeah, exactly. The waves are rolling into rolling in towards the shore, basically. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think now I don't want to put all my eggs in her basket, but one of the stalwarts, Gracie Moore, has just returned from injury. She's a goal shooter. She is incredible, and she cannot be beaten by defenders. She just can't. You just can't get around her. She's like another Jo Harton or Rachel Dunn of the English team. She is so young. I believe she's about 21, 22, but she is incredible, and she just returned from injury, and she played in the Test series against England many weeks ago now. And I don't want to put, obviously, the whole New Zealand team and the talent is not based around this one player, but I think that she is such a fantastic addition to the team that is kind of what it took for them to get their mojo back with it, I think. She just adds something extra. She's really tall, she's really, really athletic, and she's also really strong, so it's really difficult to get around. She's not just tall, wiry, and that's it. She's really strong and can hold her ground so well to the point where it's impossible for the best defenders to get around her. And that's why I would argue that New Zealand are now back in their peak. They were in a trough a while ago, and now they're back in one of their peaks. I'm not sure when it's going to drop off again, but you can be sure that it will happen again in the next few months, maybe years. But right now, I think they can ride the wave of being, as good as Australia, dare I say.
Perhaps so. It's arguably this is a series where they can really try and stamp their mark, and maybe one of the reasons why they're underrated is because their domestic league isn't seen as prestigious compared to the Super Netball and the Super League. I think that's one main reason why. I think it's another reason why we've seen, for example, the South Africans try to promote their league a lot more, because I think it's not about how prestigious your domestic league is as much as it is about how good your national team is, particularly for the case of the Silver Ferns. And yes, the ANZ Premiership, it's a league that many people are aware of, but do I follow it as much as I follow Super Netball or the Super League? No. That is the honesty of it. I don't follow it as much as I would follow any other series. Let's talk about the Aussies then themselves, that have got to come into this, I think, as the favourites to win the whole Netball Nation series. Of course, as we're probably all aware, world champions, dominant final victory against the English by 16 points. I hate to say that again because I know that sort of scoreline, 61-45, is just seared and branded in our memory right now of the kind of when England got so close but so far away. But again, 2-2 draw against the Silver Ferns in Consolations Cup, but they also come into this on a real bounce. They took a 3-0 home series win against the South Africans, absolutely demolishing the African side 77-50 in the final game of the series, absolutely knocking them for 6. Yeah, I think the Aussies have got to come into this as the favourites. Of course, I don't think any of us would read into a series win against South Africa with kind of that much. I think most people don't really rate the South Africans compared to even the Ugandans or the Malawi sides. But yeah, the Aussies, they're looking strong, aren't they, Gracie?
They are, and yeah, it doesn't take them annihilating South Africa to tell me that. I mean, South Africa were knocked off their pedestal by Uganda. Now Uganda are the top nation in Africa, so we don't necessarily need that to show that Australia are fantastic. We just know that they came. It would have been really difficult for them, for example, in the World Cup to have come from that 1-goal loss in the preliminary finals to then absolutely blow them out of the water in the final. I'm not going to repeat the number. It just makes me sad to hear the scoreline in the final.
16-point deficit. Say it again. Oh, no.
16-point deficit. 60-point deficit. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, Australia will come in, obviously, as the favourites, and they're riding the wave of that World Cup. The World Cup is the biggest tournament in netball. To win that by such a convincing amount, there's no way that you can't still be riding that way. That was only August. There's no way that they're still not living that dream. And they're at their peak in terms of their fitness, their health. I'm not hearing a lot about big players that are out with ACL injuries right now. We just had the likes of Ash Brazel, for example, who is amazing. She's just retired. But I still feel like Australia are one of those teams where they don't need that. They're a big team. They're not. There's no such thing in Australia as we're only as strong as our weakest link, or there's people that hold us back. There's no one in Australia's team that hold them back. There's no one that can't replace Ash Brazel, for example, as a fantastic centre court player that wouldn't do as well as her. I think that they just have the energy, don't they? Australia have the energy.
Australia right now, I think, are unbeatable. I know that's famous last words, and we will see if those words are famous later on. Will I try to tease some predictions out of you as well at the end of the segment? Are you somebody who kind of likes to make predictions normally, Gracie?
No, normally I don't make score predictions. I kind of have an idea in my head of who's going to win, but I don't make score predictions. But there you go. Will be interesting. Well, I think we should do it.
Well, that's all I'm going to ask you anyway, so that's fine. Let's talk about the team I'm interested in most. Uganda, 5th in the World Cup. They sadly were the sort of the losing side of a 10-point victory for the Silver Ferns, and they were also 5th in the Commonwealth Games. Where they, sadly didn't fare too well against teams they might face. They lost by 13 to the Silver Ferns and then by 21 to the Roses. So not exactly the best track record against these teams. But for a team like Uganda, these series are so important because they haven't played any international test netball since the World Cup.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really telling that Uganda only lost by 10 goals, you said, to New Zealand.
Yes, 10 goals at the World Cup.
New Zealand are ranked very highly in the world. They're a top 4 team. Uganda are a small country in Africa, and they're coming out and giving. 10-goal deficit in netball is not a lot. That is 5 turnovers of the ball, and then taking your other 5 to goal. That is not a lot in netball. That can be done in a quarter of netball, and I think that the way that they've come out and just absolutely changed the way that African netball exists is really telling. And they definitely, as much as they're the lowest ranked team out of these 4 that are doing the test series, there's no way that they haven't got the pride and the determination to try and make it higher than 5th in the world. They're fantastic. I've seen many matches between Uganda and England over the years, and some of them have been very, very close, to be honest. Uganda are very fast, very strong. They have, I believe, if I'm not wrong, they have Mary Chalk, who is the 6'7" goal shooter.
Yeah, that's tall. That's tall.
How can you not do well with 6'7" shooter? Yeah, you're right. That is
6'7". My word, that gives me vertigo just thinking about it.
I know. You would never. As soon as that ball is in her hands, you're not getting it back from her. You're not getting it back. I don't like putting this on one player of the, but she is a fantastic addition. They would not be as strong without her. And I'm hoping she's going to be there in the Test series. There's no reason why she wouldn't. And she also plays in the Super League, the England Super League. So I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how they fare against England mainly, but also the other teams, and how they can give them a bit of a run for their money.
Well, we'll see. Let's go to those predictions now then. So firstly, I'm gonna pick out, I think, the 4 important games, and then we'll try and figure out our predictions in terms of the league table. So I'll give my predictions and you can give your predictions as well. Let's start off with your predictions then. So firstly, who wins out of England versus Australia?
I think, you know what, this is difficult because I feel like I'm going to need a detailed list of the squad lineup. But if I'm making my prediction of it being future roses heavy, I'm going to predict Australia. And I don't think the gap's going to be that narrow. I think it will be quite a convincing win for Australia.
Okay, I would agree with you. The Silver Ferns versus the Aussies. I think this is the Aussies all the way. Sadly, for Silver Ferns.
I think it's going to be close, but I think Australia, yes.
And then England versus the Silver Ferns. I don't know where this goes.
Yeah,
I don't know. We will do some more in depth. We'll do some more depth predictions when they release the squads later on down the line, and we will put them up on our Instagram. We'll put them up on Xpression Sport. But England is in, and I think that's 50-50.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, that's going to be the most interesting match to watch. Statistically, that's going to be the closest match.
I think it will as well. And then England versus Uganda. Can Uganda spring a surprise? I hope so, for Uganda's sake.
I hope so. I mean, as an English fan, it's weird for me to say that, but I hope so, but I don't think they will. I think it will be I think they'll give England a good run for the money, but I don't think they're going to put them to the post, not this time. Perhaps
so. You know what, I'm going to end this segment here, but thanks for joining me, and have enjoyed being on the air for the first time as well. You're actually live instead of doing it pre-recorded. It's quite daunting, but I quite enjoyed it. I don't know, there was less opportunity for mistake, but you know me, I don't tend to make many mistakes, do I? So, no, well, you're always perfect anyways, Gracie, so don't worry about it. Well, you know what, welcome to my world of doing it live on the air and constantly thinking about what you're saying and not screwing up, not saying anything kind of wrong or trying to stick to the words. And this is what I'm doing on the regular, Gracie. And you know what? You do such a good job of it, Joseph. Well, thank you. Thank you, my friend. You know what? You do an even better job for somebody who's only just started doing this a few weeks ago. With that being said, we're going to go to a song break before we welcome EU Rugby League, ex-University Rugby League, even into the studio. And in light of our chat about a night out, let's play 2 a.m. by Foals.